The Township of Hamilton Committee meeting for Tuesday, July 6, 2021 to order. Would you please rise for the flag salute? Mr. Chief.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law by posting a notice of this meeting on the bulletin board of the municipal building and by publication in the Precedence City and Star Ledger on January the 11th, 2021. Mr. Chief?
Here.
Mr. Bouchard?
Present.
Mrs. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Vitale?
Here.
Mayor King?
Happy to be in your presence. All right, next, would you please join me in a moment of silence for private reflection? All right, next we're going to move on to the first item, which is a guest presentation. We have County Solicitor James Ferguson here and retired Superior Court Judge Mark Sanson regarding county municipal court. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked Mr. Miller if we could make this presentation sitting down because of just the back gets sore after a while, if you all don't mind. I want to thank you, Mayor, and the other members of the council for, or the committee for allowing us to be here this evening to make this presentation. What is being proposed is a countywide municipal court system. To be brief about it, or as brief as I can be, and still give you a full picture. This had its genesis last summer with an idea that was germinated by the county executive. And he asked me to form a committee to explore this. A committee was formed consisting of various municipal officials and also people from the Superior Court, including the assignment judge Julio Mendez, Judge Sanson, who retired and is a member of the committee, Judge Lou Belasco, who is the presiding municipal court judge for the Vicinage, and that includes not only Atlantic County, but also Cape May County, Howard Birchtold, who is the trial court administrator, and Brian Jetter, who is the municipal court manager for the courts. We held bi-weekly Zoom conferences, which started last September. In October, we formed a smaller subcommittee of interested municipal officials. And Mayor, if you will recall, you were on at least one of those calls. I think it was back in January of this year. We continued to meet up until just recently, and the result or the product of those various meetings was what I'll refer to as a tripartite agreement, which would be between the county, the administrative office of the courts, and municipalities that would choose to participate. I want to indicate at the outset that all the entities have a stake in this process. The agreement would call for the county's contribution to this to be the refurbishing of what's commonly referred to as the old criminal courthouse on Main Street. It has a formal name now, the Atlantic County Government Services Building. But the plan would be to create 2 to 3 courtrooms in that facility to house the court, along with the creating of judges' chambers and workspaces for municipal prosecutors and the municipal public defenders, and then also creating a approximately 1,500 square foot administrative office that would be used by the administrative staff that would staff the court. The county would pay for all of the renovations, and that would be the county's contribution. No portion of that expenditure would be billed back to the municipalities who participate. The other thing that the county would do would be to work with the Atlantic County Sheriff to provide the security for the building, and the county would pay for the security apparatus like the magnetometers and things like that that are needed to, as people come into the court. In terms of security, we in fact, I, along with the county administrator, Jerry Del Rosso, and our public safety director, Mike Fedorko, are scheduled to meet tomorrow with Sheriff Scheffler and the chief sheriff's officer, Jim Sharkey, to go over and to discuss security arrangements and how those would be handled. That's the county's role in the process. The court's role in the process is the court would be furnishing the various IT equipment that would be utilized in the court and would also provide all the recording equipment. They use a very sophisticated recording equipment in the Superior Court system. That's what they would propose to put into this court arrangement. And the third party would be any participating municipalities. As I said, all have a stake in the process. Lest anyone believe that this is something that's going to be dictated from the top down, the draft agreement that I have provided and that Mr. Miller has a copy of provides for two significant committees that would be made up of representatives from the municipalities. There would be a governance committee, which would contain 5 members, allocated on a geographic basis so that each region of the county would have a representative on that committee. That committee would stay in contact with the court throughout the year and would report back on court activities. But perhaps most importantly, in the last quarter of each calendar year, that committee would be charged with sitting down with county administration and with people from the Superior Court system and to formulate the budget for the ensuing calendar year. So that committee plays a very important role. Then there would be a 5-person personnel committee. Again, the representation on that committee done on a geographical basis. That committee will be very important for several reasons. Number one, it will meet with the Superior Court personnel who are involved in overseeing the municipal courts to determine the number of positions that are needed for this court. That would be the number of judges, the number of prosecutors, the number of public defenders, and the number of court staff that would be required. Obviously, you need a court administrator, you need probably several deputy court administrators, and then you would need the Violations Bureau clerk and other clerks, along with an accountant and people that would keep that court functioning. That committee would determine, along with input from the court, the number of positions that are necessary. Now, the number of positions are going to be largely dependent on the size of the court. How many municipalities choose to join will determine in the first instance how many people we need to run a court effectively, from the judges on down to the people who work in the administrative office. The committee will also review with the court and will make salary recommendations for the positions. Those salary recommendations under this process would then be passed along to the county executive, and the county executive, with the advice and consent of the county board of commissioners, would then set the salaries for the respective positions. The committee would also advertise for the positions for the court and would then interview people who are interested, would collect resumes, recommendations, paperwork, whatever, and then would meet with people, would interview them, and then would make recommendations for each of the positions from the judges on down to the county executive. Now, the county executive would make the final call with regard to all of the positions except for the position of the judges. And that's because under state statute and under the state constitution, where there's a regional municipal court, as this would be, the statute provides that the governor makes the final appointment. But that would be based upon, the process would work where the committee would make recommendations to the county executive. Say it's determined we need 4 judges and 6 people's names are put forward. The executive would then, out of those 6 that are recommended by the committee, would make the recommendation of the 4 that are needed. Those names would be submitted to the governor, and the governor would make the selection with the advice and consent of the state senate. That's what the statute provides for. The names would also be passed along to the assignment judge of the county, Judge Mendez, and the reason for that is if the governor was delayed in making his appointments, the assignment judge under state statute can make a temporary appointment. So say this court is up and ready to go, and we're now in December, and the names have been passed along to the governor, and the governor just hasn't acted. In order to get that court started, the assignment judge could make the assignment of judges on a temporary basis so the court could be ready to go January 1st. This has its genesis not only in the idea of the county executive, but also as a result of state legislation that Senator Sweeney introduced back in October. When he introduced that, it called for a pilot program that would take place in various counties. At the time when we got that legislation, I reviewed it with the executive, and I said to him, I said, Denny, the problem is that this legislation does not provide for a court to be run by the county. We determined that we would need amendments to the legislation to do that. I put some amendatory language together, sent it, or actually Denny sent it with a letter under his signature to Senator Sweeney, and within a couple of days, Senator Sweeney got back to him, endorsed the concept, and said that he would see to his legislation being amended, which it was. The amendments and the legislation cleared both chambers of the legislature back on June 24th. They're now awaiting the governor's signature, and we fully expect the governor to sign this legislation. And the reason I feel confident in that is that the governor has been a big proponent of shared services. In fact, formed a committee that's part of the Department of Community Affairs, where he assigned 2 representatives on a bipartisan basis, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, which he designated as shared services czars. The czars have participated in our meetings, and we were encouraged by representatives from that group to apply for a challenge grant, which we did, and the challenge grant was accepted, and the county has at its disposal $150,000 to help defray various costs with this. I can't believe that the governor would go to all of that and then not sign this legislation. So I feel confident that the legislation will be signed and will become law. It's our job at this point to try to move this project forward. We have 6 commitments with resolutions from 6 municipalities. I hope I can remember them off the top of my head. We have Ventnor, Estelle Manor, Weymouth Township, Linwood, Egg Harbor Township, and Galloway Township. The agreement calls for, we're optimally looking for 8 municipalities to join to get started. If Northfield is out there, they had delayed on acting approximately 2 weeks ago. The information that I have, and I believe it's reliable information, is that they will take this up at their next meeting and are prepared to vote in favor of it to join. If Hamilton Township comes on board, that would be big for us. And the reason for that is that it would give us, outside of Atlantic City, the 3 largest municipalities between Egg Harbor Township, Galloway Township, and Hamilton. You would have almost 50,000 cases in volume for this court. And that would, we believe, based on the pro formas that we've put together, would provide further savings if Hamilton Township is in this. There's a couple of other municipalities that are also possibilities. I don't want to speculate there, but it's a possibility that Mullica Township would be interested, and possibly Port Republic. So, we could wind up if we're fortunate with as many as 10 or 11 municipalities in, the more in, the greater the savings would be. I have provided your administrator, your interim administrator, Mr. Miller, who I thank for taking the time to speak with me. Peter was very instrumental when he was over at Egg Harbor Township in helping this process move forward there, and he's, I believe, been helpful in this process in where we get to the point where I'm here this evening to address you. I just want to talk briefly about some advantages. If Hamilton Township joins now, you would basically be in on the ground floor, and that would allow for a greater level of participation and would give Hamilton Township an ability to help shape this process. You would certainly be on one of those committees and would have representation, and your voice would be heard. The other advantage is, obviously, the more towns, the savings, which I've already talked about. I know Mr. Miller has those and can share them with you. One of the pro formas that we worked up, actually, I didn't work it up, it was worked up by the people in the court. I sent over certain information that Mr. Miller and your CFO were kind enough to provide to me, and as a result, the court worked up numbers which I believe showed in round numbers savings of roughly $276,000 to Hamilton Township. That's $276,000 lower than what you're currently paying on an annual basis. These savings are annual. Plus, any revenue that you get, and the figures that I saw on a 3-year average from, the court did a 3-year average from 2017 through 2019. We didn't do 2020 because of the pandemic, figuring that that year would be an outlier. But for those 3 years, the yearly average, I think you folks brought in roughly $627,000 in revenue. The way this would be done, if it cost you, say, $500,000 to as your share, and the share, again, is based on the percentage of cases that Hamilton Township has to the total volume of cases for the participating municipalities. That's how it would be broken down. But say if, and I'm just throwing this out as an example, if you, Hamilton's share of the cost is, say, $500,000, you would the revenue that's gotten on the cases through the year would be allocated, would be kept by the central court, but would be allocated and credited to Hamilton Township. At the end of the year, going into the following year, if you bring in, say, $625,000 in revenue, $500,000 of that would be used toward the next year's allocation, and the balance of the money, the $125,000, would come back to Hamilton Township to be used whatever way you want to use it. And unlike some other deals out there that we hear from other towns who are out there trying to poach, I'll call it for what it is on this process, that are looking to split the revenue 50-50 or some other breakdown, the county is not looking to do that. Whatever revenue over and above the actual costs for the ensuing year goes back to the municipality. That, we believe, is one of the advantages of this. Now, there have been concerns raised. A couple of the issues that have been talked about would be security. I think I've addressed that. That'll be handled through the sheriff's office. The other thing will be about police officers' time. I want to tell you that if the pandemic taught us anything, it taught the court system that it can do things virtually. Over the last, say, 15, now almost 18, going on 18 months, the municipal courts have handled everything on a virtual basis. That's expected to continue. It's estimated that 80 to 85% of the cases will be handled virtually, and that's going to continue. And the reason I know that is that Judge Glenn Grant, who's the interim or the acting director of the Administrative Office of the Courts, on June 2nd, issued a notice to the bar and to the public that municipal court matters, except for DUI cases, cases of serious penal consequences, like if the prosecutor's office remands a criminal matter back to municipal court, or a very complex matter in terms of witnesses or issues, those matters would have to be tried via a live presentation in the court. But all of the other matters, like your routine traffic offenses or stop sign violations, parking tickets, and the like, will be handled virtually. So your officers will, for most of the cases, will never have to leave this building in order to testify. And if they do, it's a short run right down and around the corner to the court facility that would be set up. There's been concerns raised about employees and how your current employees would be handled. There was a concern initially expressed to me by Commissioner Gatto, who about a month or more ago called me and said, one of the problems we have is that we're a non-civil service municipality and our people would not be eligible. And I said to her, I said, Amy, that's not the case. And she said, can you put that in writing? I issued her, I think it was a 3 or 4 page written memorandum and cited the statutory authority for saying that. Qualified people from this municipality will certainly be given due consideration for any position for which they are qualified. No, I can't sit here and I can't make you a guarantee that so-and-so, Mrs. Smith or Miss Jones are going to be hired for specific positions. Ethically, I can't do that. There's no way I can predict that with certainty. I can tell you that if this process gets up and running, this will be the largest regional court of its kind in the state, probably in the state of New Jersey, certainly in this county. And for a large court setup, we would be looking for experienced people, and not only people with experience, but people who have experience in running a large court operation. You're not going to put someone in a court in a position of great authority who operates a court that maybe meets one time a month. You would want people who operate a court and oversee a court that has multiple sessions, weekly sessions, or at least multiple sessions on a monthly basis. So, I believe that Hamilton Township's personnel will certainly be given due consideration for being hired. The subject comes up about risks. Are there risks? Certainly there are risks. There's risks to all parties in this. The county is taking a risk. It will be refurbishing a court system. It will be spending money there. The court system is taking a risk because it's going to be responsible for fronting the costs of putting in the various pieces of information technology and the recording systems that are going to be used in this court. But I would tell you that the risk, I believe, is minimal. And that's because there's a 2-year commitment under this agreement. You would have to be in for at least 2 years. If you join and the court gets operational, and it will have to get operational January 1, 2022, you would be in for 2022 and 2023. If you're unhappy at the end of 2023, you give 6 months notice and you're out. I would tell you that when you're looking at the risk factors, there are risks in any decisions that you make as municipal officials. If you're not willing to take risks, you would stifle progress and innovation. The role of effective management is to minimize and control those risks, and that is exactly what this plan does. In the overall scheme of things, the risk is not great, and the potential rewards are substantial. Sometimes, in order to obtain meaningful results for our citizens, elected and appointed officials have to be prepared to step out of their comfort zone and think outside the box. I'm suggesting to you that this is one of these times. This is a concept whose time has come, and I trust that having done your due diligence, you will move forward to adopt this plan for the overall benefit of the township citizens. And Mayor and Council, I want to thank you. I will be prepared to answer any questions. Judge Sampson is now prepared to, with your permission, prepared to talk about the certain other benefits that this court brings, which while I could talk about, he's in a much better, more qualified position to talk about them. So,
Committee, I believe, would you like to hear from Judge first, and then we'll go ahead and ask her questions after? How about we do that? Okay.
Yeah, my name is Mark Sampson. I'm a retired Superior Court judge. I practice law. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm used to people saying I need a microphone. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, my name is Mark Sanson. I'm a retired Superior Court judge. I've practiced law before that for about 30 years. So I've been a lawyer and a judge for approximately 45 years, all in Atlantic County. I am here today as a retired judge because I think that this is an idea, Jim said it best, whose idea has come around. I think it's great that the taxpayers of Hamilton Township are going to save a lot of money if you think about what the swing of getting your revenue and saving money on court operations is going to be. That's great. It's certainly one of your major jobs, particularly in this period of time, having gone through this horrendous COVID situation. All towns are strapped for money, and it's difficult. So the savings of possibly $400,000 a year is nothing to sneeze at. That is not why I'm here. I'm here for two reasons. One, the statement on the outside of the United States Supreme Court on the podium says equal justice under the law. There are some great courts in Atlantic County, municipal courts. I'm obviously not going to tell you who they are. I don't want to, irritate anybody. There are some mediocre courts and maybe some that are not so good. What is, I think, optimal in the administration of justice is having one authority in the county that will issue equal justice. That is important. It's an important concept. It's important for it not to make a difference whether I go to Folsom or Atlantic City or Pleasantville or Port Republic in order to seek justice for similar cases. One unified, consolidated municipal court in this county will have the effect of making this a more fair and a more just court. That is one of the reasons why I'm here. The second reason is the additional capabilities that such a unified court is going to have. For the last 5 years, during my judicial tenure, I was the recovery court judge in Atlantic and Cape May counties. So I dealt exclusively with about 1,000 defendants who were in what used to be called our drug court. It's now called recovery court in these two counties. I know the horrible impacts of drug addiction, substance abuse in Hamilton Township, in Fairbanks, Alaska, and every town in between. And one of the unintended consequences of criminal justice reform has been that more and more cases are being not handled at the prosecutor's levels, not resulting in indictments. They're being remanded back to the municipal court in the various communities, to disorderly persons offenses. And they're being remanded back largely to municipal courts that have no resources to deal with the root causes of these problems. The three areas, if you sit in your municipal court and watch it for an entire day, I assure you much more than 50% of the cases that actually come before a judge, as opposed to people paying for running a stop sign or something like that, have to do with substance abuse problems, and it's all of our kids, it's all of our relatives, it's everybody. It's mental health problems, and it is domestic abuse or domestic violence. Those are the cases that come before your municipal court. Right now, with there being 16 municipal courts in Atlantic County, it's very difficult to marshal resources in 16 different courts in 16 different places to handle those three issues. The reason I am here, the primary reason I am here, is that having one single municipal court will allow us to marshal all of the resources. We can have somebody at the municipal court, actually the Sheriff's Hope One program would be active there, where you see people, you can get them right into treatment right then and there, because if you do not, they will be back. Jim said correctly that the 7 or 8 or 9 towns that we're going to have are going to have 50,000 cases. The total number of cases in Atlantic County are somewhere around 100,000, so it would be 50% of the total volume of the municipal courts in Atlantic County. I assure you that of those 50,000 people, it's a far less number, maybe 10,000 people who come back 4 times, because their problems are not going to be solved by coming in here and saying, okay, you got a $200 fine, you got a $300 fine. You're on probation, but we don't have any probation officers to supervise probation. Probation without supervision is meaningless. These are problems, particularly the problem of substance abuse, of which I am extremely aware, are problems that can only be dealt with by treatment. And we can organize and I'm committed to assisting in that. And I've talked to many people about how we're going to do this. Mobilize treatment people to come to court on specified days. We may have domestic violence victim days. We will have substance abuse days for sure. We will have mental health days for sure. So maybe you can, through treatment, solve some of these problems that will keep people from coming back and back and back and back, clogging the volume of the court, but also, much more importantly, ruining their lives. Is this something that we can help? Yes, I've seen it. Treatment does work. But the fact that the people who are remanded cannot get into our recovery court, ironically, you have to be indicted to get into recovery court, and fewer people who are simply guilty of possessory offenses, particularly, are indicted. They're remanded. Now, people who are guilty of possessory offenses, possession of heroin, these are drug addicts. They are people who have substance abuse issues. There's going to be no impact of having come to court, say you shouldn't do that anymore, you're not going to do it anymore. No, I'm not. They're going to walk out and they're going to be doing heroin on the way home from here. I mean, I've seen it at the Superior Court level. It happens on the municipal court level. So what the unique ability that this will give us is the ability to deal with treatment at the courts. And that expands the role of the courts. It expands the role of justice. And we're actually doing something about the problems that are plaguing our communities. That's why I'm here. That's why I think this is extremely important. That's why we want Hamilton Township to be a part of this. I think the program will work. As Jim says, it takes some vision to get there. It has to happen. It's a program I firmly believe is going to happen. The time is right. The courts are chipping in. The county is chipping in. The municipalities have to join and actually save money. Now, I would suggest that now is the time. That's really all I have to say, but I certainly will be here to answer questions.
Committee?
Is this a savings for the county as well, this court system?
My answer is the county is going to spend more money. They're going to fit out the building, which I'm told is in pretty good shape on the inside, but I don't think it's going to be a savings for Atlantic County. Atlantic County is going to get in the court business, which they're certainly not going to make any money on, so I assume it's going to cost them money.
Okay. If you have 50,000 or 100,000 cases, is that going to be difficult to handle and make it very cumbersome for the people who are trying to pay their speeding ticket or whatever?
In fact, my answer is it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be easier because we're going to have the people who have designed this system. It's not me and it's not Jim. Jim can do it better than me, but the reality of it is we have 4 people working on this from the Superior Court level. Howard Berktold, 42 years doing municipal court work. Lou Belasco, probably 30 years as a municipal court judge and an expert. Brian Jetter, who's the head of our municipal division. Those people have in fact devised it, so it's going to be more efficient and it's going to be easier. And I assume you've been to municipal courts. People show up at 9 o'clock. The lawyers, bum rush the prosecutor at the very beginning so they get their clients out of here first. People who are sitting in the back can easily be there till 4 o'clock in the afternoon and not be heard and put off to another day. Here, when we're doing 85% of the cases virtually in a centralized system with experienced people running it, we can have a point. You have to call in at 3 o'clock, for instance, 2:30, 3 o'clock. There won't be people milling around outside of every municipal building in Atlantic County. This will be better. It will be a better experience. Look, going to court's usually not a great experience for a defendant, and it's not going to be, but it'll be easier. People will be able to get in their computers. They'll be able to, plead guilty, plead not guilty, have a trial, except in cases where somebody may work out where somebody's going to go to jail, which in municipal court is, I'm not going to say never happens. Certainly in a third-time drunk driving case it does. But other than that, people are going to have appointments to come. There's going to be special days, days involving substance abuse where you have the treatment people. So the whole thing will be actually it will be beneficial for the clients, for the users of the system. Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's why.
Oh, microphone.
Yeah. In terms of, the county will have upfront expenditures on this. The capital costs are already budgeted for in the county budget. So it's not like we're going to go out with any special bonding or have to impose any special assessment to raise that money. That'll be a one-time cost, basically done with in terms of the capital improvements. The real savings are going to be realized by the municipalities. The county, up to now, doesn't get involved in the municipal court process. So it's not a situation where we expend money now on municipal court, because that's handled at the municipal level in every municipality. Either every municipality has its own standalone court, or they do a shared court concept or a joint court process. So those are the three ways that can be done. This is would be a regional court.
Do you think that more people will be treated for drug abuse under this system, and why?
Well, based on what Judge Sampson says, I believe that's the case. I'll let Mark answer this, because he's the one that has observed this firsthand at the Superior Court level and can address it.
It used to be that drug court in the Superior Court level, that anybody who had a small amount of heroin, most usually, right, on a glassine envelope would get indicted and could go to drug court. That is not what's going on anymore. Unless you have, and I don't know if there's an exact number, but it's certainly been said to me, about 50 packs of heroin on you, you're not going to get indicted. You're going to be remanded with a wish and a prayer. Unfortunately, a wish and a prayer does not work for substance abuse disorder. You need treatment. I think there will be treatment people in this court. I'm going to hang in there, and I'm going to make sure there's treatment people in this court, and we're going to deal with this, because until we deal with it, we are never going to get our communities right again. And I don't care whether it's Hamilton Township or Atlantic City or Camden, Newark, or any points in between. We have to really step up and try to deal with these issues, which I've identified, and there are many, as substance abuse, mental health, which is another case type, which is very, very difficult for 16 courts in this county to deal with, with some degree of effectiveness. So I think it's going to be much more effective. Not even a little bit, but much more effective, because I don't think the job is primarily getting done. I know Hamilton Township's program, and I know that there's been an effort here to do it, but it's very, very difficult in a municipal court which doesn't have the economies of scale that we will have, handling anywhere from hopefully 8 to 11 courts to begin with. And I frankly believe that in a couple of years we're going to have everybody here, because the savings are just too much to ignore. And, what do we have against the savings? Against the savings, we have, the other reasons why people want their own courts. And some of those are great reasons, and some of them are not. But it's an idea whose time has come, and I hope Hamilton Township is there.
It was pointed out to me that people who were repeat offenders would go to one court, say in Estill Manor, and say, "No, I'll never use again." In this area or this township, but then they'll go to another township and say the same thing, that they'll never use.
Of course,
again.
and it's all a lie.
Yeah,
it's all a lie.
So that what happens is there's no communication.
Correct.
About that. And these people go on, it's just like going to different pharmacists for Oxycontin.
They call it doctor shopping.
Yeah.
You go doctor shopping. And the one thing when they say, I'm not going to do any, they're in court and they say, I'm never going to do drugs again, that's the same thing as until I walk out these doors. And maybe they don't wait till they walk out the doors. Because one of the things, if you look at the psychiatric literature, people who have a substance abuse disorder, they cannot tell the truth about using drugs. Because they may have the greatest, how many times do people stand in front of me and say, "I'm through, Judge, I'm through, I can't take it anymore, I've ruined my family, I'm bankrupt, I don't have a job, my employer never wants to see me again," and then the next week they get arrested with dope. It's a disease. It is not a moral failure. These are not bad people. These are really nice people who have a disease. It's like if you have diabetes, you get treatment. If you have cancer, you get treatment. It's something that we are now doing better in our society, but we have to start it at a more grassroots level. I'm particularly concerned about young people because the average age of people that get to drug court at the Superior Court level are probably around 35 because you have to have approximately 10 prior convictions before you're facing state prison, and people don't usually come into recovery court until they're facing state prison in the face, and nobody wants to go to state prison. They want to avoid going to state prison, and at the municipal court level, you don't have the state prison option, so you need to do other things, and we have other resources. The sheriff does a phenomenal job through Hope One. There are, Volunteers of America who works here, as a matter of fact. We have Jewish Family Services. All these entities have committed to being at one central location to deal with it. I mean, the sheriff will park the truck out there and we'll take people directly to treatment from municipal court. If they say yes in there to the judge, they got to go then. They can't say, make me here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, because guess what? They won't be here.
Very good.
As a further response to your question,
Jim. Oh, I'm sorry.
the shopping around or going from one municipality to the other, let's assume that happens. There's a good chance they'll be back in the central court in front of the same judge again, so that judge will know, hey, when I was here doing Hamilton Township's list, I saw you. Now you're over doing this in Estelle Manor. I think it'll be a more cohesive system this way.
And let me answer your question as honestly as I can be. If you don't get them into treatment, they will be back. It's not a question. It is a disease that makes people use these drugs because, that we understand it. We don't perfectly understand the disease, but we understand a lot more about it than we used to. It is, it's certain enzymes that are released in your brain which crave it in order to even feel okay. They're never going to get to great unless they're extremely high. So it's something that has to be addressed at the grassroots level in municipal court, or it's not going to be addressed until they do something really bad where, and usually it's some kind of a mistake. They break into the wrong person's house and they get into a fight and something like that occurs. And then they're looking at state prison. Okay, then we send somebody with a substance abuse disorder to state prison. It costs us $65,000 a year to keep somebody in New Jersey state prison for a year. I'd rather send your kids to Harvard than put somebody to be a drug addict, particularly, who's not going to get anywhere being inside a concrete box with guards walking around 24 hours a day. Because they're going to get out, and the stories you hear, they get out, they get paroled, they get out, they're using drugs on the way home from state prison to home. So treatment is the only answer, and this helps us treat people and reach solutions that can stop the 100,000 Atlantic County cases. Let's say 30% of them have to do with substance abuse. I think it's higher, but let's use a lower number. Help that stop. Now, if that stops, we'll go down in cases. It'll be even cheaper for Hamilton Township, less expensive, save the taxpayers more money, and that's not where I'm going. It's going to save these lives that are now being wasted and horribly degraded through all sorts of problems of drug addiction and all the other crimes that are drug crimes. Drug crimes are breaking and entering. Drug crimes are robbery. Drug crimes are prostitution. These are all drug crimes primarily. And the only way to do that is through treatment at the grassroots level. It's not going to happen at the Superior Court in many cases because of the criminal justice reform movement, which is, I get it, but these people are not getting indicted now. They are coming back to these courts, and they are not being served.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a precedence for what we're doing here in New Jersey?
I'm sorry.
Is there precedence for regional courts in New Jersey?
No, there are several joint courts in various areas of the state, but nothing on this scale has been attempted before, and that's why Senator Sweeney introduced the legislation last October and then did the amendment that would allow it to be done under the auspices of the county.
Okay.
This is so interesting. I don't know if you saw, but today, and I think it'll be in the paper tomorrow, the chairman of the county Democratic Party and the chairman of the county Republican Party issued a joint statement endorsing a consolidated court and saying the time has come. This is not a political issue. This is an issue the Republicans and Democrats agree, and it says it's the exact, I should have brought the statement, it'll be in the paper tomorrow. It's needed, and it's needed now. We have to do it now. This, you know, our kids are being destroyed by this. We have to do what, and it's not our kids, it's our mothers, our fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and cousins. It's everybody. We need to take steps. And I think this is a positive, affirmative step that we can take to help people while accomplishing the purpose of good government, which is saving taxpayers' money.
Is the state gonna help in any of this for example, in recovery?
The state Superior Court is providing the equipment, the Court Smart equipment, which it's $500,000 or so. I'm sure it's a big deal and it's a lot of work. The Superior Court is also agreeing to give kiosks to every town. Now, Hamilton Township want one. We're not making. Some people said we have to have one. They don't. But it'll be we usually are going to put them in town halls where people who are on the wrong side of the digital divide, they don't have a computer at home or they don't have internet service. The Superior Court has agreed to pay for having these kiosks where, if you want them in the library, the city hall, wherever you want them, where with people to say this is how you use it, and allow people to have access to a terminal which they can then make a virtual appearance. So they're doing that. Plus, we got the $150,000 challenge grant from the state, and and I believe that when they see this is a successful experiment, we will be able to apply for more grants, and we are in the process of thinking about that as well. Particularly in the area of addiction and mental health. This is going to be, I mean, the municipal court is a mental health court. It is a domestic violence court. It is a substance abuse court. Like it or not, that's what it is. Other than that, we were just paying traffic tickets. I mean, because think about your DUIs. Michael Connor, who was my predecessor as the drug court judge, who Bob Sandman knows very well, he tried many cases in front of him, as did I. They gave me the following statistics. If somebody has one DUI, there's a 33% chance that person is an alcoholic. 2, 66% chance somebody coming in with 3, 100% chance that person is an addict. And alcohol is just another drug. Your brain doesn't know whether you're shooting up heroin or you're drinking. It's the same thing. It's the same impact on the brain.
What about an individual that might want to be heard in person? I mean, would they be required to do virtual?
No, I believe arrangements could be made for their case to be heard, what I'll call live presentation.
And
Or
even
in
better,
person, I guess is the right word.
Schedule, because there won't be that many. They'll be say you come in 10:45. You don't be here at 9 and wait till 4 in the afternoon. Come here at 10:30, 2:30, 1:30. We're talking about evening hours. We're talking about also possibly weekend hours, depending on the demand for it. We'll be flexible.
And to your point about those that may be on the opposite end of the digital divide, will there be kiosks in the actual county courthouse for access for individuals?
Yeah, but by the way, if you go to the county courthouse, Maize Landing, where I sat for 10 years, there are kiosks there now. There are, yes.
So the additional questions I have quickly, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that you're meeting with the Sheriff's Department tomorrow. Those numbers, we can't make sense of anything until those numbers are plugged in, what that actual cost is going to be. And if you look at the 3 growth communities, with the total amount of cases, they equal in excess of 45%, closer to 50% of all the cases throughout the county.
50%.
And Hamilton alone is at roughly 17-18%. And when I do some deep dive analysis on it, it looks like that Hamilton right now is one of the most efficient courts. And when I say that, I mean by what it costs to run our court, by the amount of cases that we move through. It appears that we are very efficient, and our cost per case, when you compare it to the other municipalities, is in some cases considerably less. And some of the smaller communities, that I see with caseloads of, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, their cost per caseload is much higher.
There are
So-
economies of scale in this area.
So is that going to be equalized out against us, I guess is my point. In other words, if we are currently running what I feel is an extremely efficient court, we move the docket very quickly and we move through. If we're 17, 18% and the three growth communities are 45 to 50%, is it going to be proportionate across the board when these expense numbers actually do come out?
Mayor, the plan or the agreement calls for, the current language in the agreement calls for there to be an allocation made on the basis of the percentage of cases. So let's say the total volume of cases is 100,000 and Hamilton Township has 18,000 cases. 18% of what the total cost of the court operation would be allocated to Hamilton Township. That would be your contribution to the court.
It's exactly proportional.
But I do think that if we have a history of running maybe a little more efficient court, that shouldn't be as proportionate. When you look at the average case in Estelle Manor, cost them $735 to prosecute.
They have 100 cases a year. I mean, they don't-
But again, when you go back through each of the other towns, Hamilton averages around $46 a case. Others are in the 60, 70 range per case. So I think it's something that needs to be considered when you're looking at bringing on someone such as Hamilton. And the other concern that I would have is, we know what our collection efforts are currently. We know how much we generate, what we collect, and then we know out of that outstanding amount of money, we know what we bring in on an annual basis. Obviously there's concerns of how that's going to be impacted by moving to a county system where now we're relying on the collection efforts of the court system as a whole or the county. So that's a real concern. We've already done a analysis of our numbers. Those numbers have been done. They've been provided to the auditor to check those numbers. We're looking forward to your numbers so that we can do the same thing with. But I do have a question on collection. I mean, I think earlier you said if we're collecting in that $600,000 range, that a percentage would come back automatically, and then there would basically be a set aside amount, I guess, for.
Yes. Yeah, Mayor, let's say at the end of a given calendar year, I think I used the example before, you say Hamilton Township realizes revenues of $650,000. While those numbers, that money would actually be paid to the central court, but the people who would do the books there or whatever would allocate that money to Hamilton Township. And then when the budget is struck for the ensuing year, if your contribution, say, is $500,000, then $500,000 of that amount that was collected would be applied against your next year's allocation. So you would be paid in full, and then that other $150,000 would come back. The central court would write you a check and would send that money back to Hamilton Township. As far as collection efforts, I mean, I really believe that if we get good quality people working in this court system, and that's what we would be striving to do, that you'll have experienced people there who will make the efforts necessary to make sure that those collection numbers are kept up.
Well, with all due respect, we have 7 people in our court system here, and I agree with your comments earlier. I mean, I believe those individuals should be and would be more attractive to a county court system because they're moving 14 to 15,000 cases on an annual basis, as opposed to some of the courts that are moving 1,000 or 3,000 cases on an annual basis.
There's no question about that, Mayor, and that's why I made the comment before that I made, that I think that people here in Hamilton Township would be given really substantial consideration on this because of their experience level and the volume that they're used to dealing with. You're not going to put a person in charge of this court who runs a court that meets once a month. I mean, that just wouldn't make sense, practically speaking.
The other concern I have, and I taken the time to read through the legislation. I do have some questions, but in the interest of time, I believe that those can be answered via an email or something I'll send to you, because I'm going to be waiting
Absolutely,
on
Mayor.
numbers from you.
If you need to call me, feel free, or any members of the committee want to reach out to me, I'll, at the conclusion here, give you both my office number and my cell phone number. You folks can feel free to reach out anytime that's convenient to you, and we'll talk.
So my last question would be, when, if Hamilton did join, when would that revenue be realized for us? Because obviously, I don't want to see us lose it being able to be plugged into the following budget or whatever budget year we start with. So if it starts January 1st, we'd obviously be looking at the end of '22. When will that money be able to be, when will the township be able to identify that money, what the money is going to be, so that they can plug it into their budget numbers for that year?
Part of that will
Consideration
depend.
been given to that?
Yeah, that would probably be, Mayor, at the end of the year that you're in, before you go into the next year, or at such time, and Judge Belasco has pointed this out, that as the administrative office of the courts would direct, and that may be something that we would, that they would tell us, no, you can't hold it till the end of the year, you got to give it back to the municipality on like a quarterly or a semi-annual basis. Those are still some issues that would perhaps have to be explored. To go back to the point that you made too about perhaps getting credit because of the fact that you handle your cases so efficiently and maybe another municipality that's involved doesn't. Those are issues that could be brought up if you're part of the governance committee or the personnel committee and raise those issues. I mean, this agreement will be a guide. This will set the court up. But in terms of, the operations and all, I mean, all ideas would be welcome on that, and the participants in the court would then decide if another mechanism, say, is set up that would be more efficient, and the people involved in the system, the participants, would decide that they want to do it a different way, as long as state statute doesn't prohibit that. That would be something that could be worked out.
Obviously, something as simple as, $10 a case over 14,000 cases, you do the math, I mean, it makes a difference. And if it's $20 or $30 a case, it could be a substantial difference. So
Yep.
that's why I bring it up.
Yep, absolutely.
Committee, any other questions?
I have a question. As far as operating expense, the old courthouse that you're planning on using, will the county be charging all the signed up municipalities their portion of rent on that?
No, there will be no rent.
There'll be no rent?
The county will refurbish the court, and then the equipment and everything will be put in. When I say refurbishing, that means any of the capital improvements, carpeting the courtrooms, putting in whatever's necessary to fix that room up according to the AOC, Administrative Office of the Court standards for a municipal courtroom. That's the way it'll be. But the county isn't going to look to recoup that or charge municipalities rent. You will simply pay your cost of the operation of that court, and basically that is the costs of the personnel, the cost for the judges, the prosecutors, the public defenders, and the administrative staff. That's what will be divvied up among the participating municipalities.
On a per case basis.
No operating expenses of the building, nothing for the
No.
sheriffs?
No, the county will absorb the cost of the, as I said, the capital improvements, and then maintaining the building, so that, if like something breaks down in the court and needs fixing, the county will bear that cost. We're not going to come back to the municipalities and expect the municipalities to pick up the cost of that.
All right, thank you.
How are you gonna bear that cost? Taxes gonna go up?
No, that'll be part of our budget. First of all, a lot of things that we do, we have contracts with different contractors that come in and do things where there's a cost not to exceed. So say, we get in the building and a plumbing problem develops, the county has plumbers that are on contract that would come out and would handle those
I mean,
problems.
has the county any thought process on how much they're gonna have to raise taxes to cover this cost?
I don't think at this point that there's any belief that we will have to raise taxes to do this. As I said, the money, we have a capital program where this money has already been set aside to do this. This isn't going to be bonded for or the like, and there's not going to be any special assessment to county taxpayers to pay for this. So that part of it is covered. And I don't want to sit here and promise anybody I can't do that.
Free lunch.
But at least getting this thing up and running, and to go back to Councilman Cheek's question, no, we will maintain the building. That will be our contribution to this shared service, because it is a shared service.
Because I'm seeing, it says $276,000 a year savings for Hamilton Township. Hopefully. If the county raises their tax rate 2 cents, it's a wash. We're not gaining anything.
All I will tell you is, I don't believe that's likely to happen. And I believe that based on the economies of scale that this brings, that, that will be handled and will be handled without any detrimental impact to the county taxpayers based on the county tax rate.
And then the only other thing, I know that the sheriff will take care of security in the building and everything, but I do see an influx of more people into our town, parking. It could cause a little bit of a strain on our township police force. Is there any chance that the county could get patrol involved around the courthouse, like within a 2-block radius? Something like that? Is that something that can be discussed further? Because I don't want to step on our chief's toes here, but I just want to bring that up and say that's one of my concerns is increased strain on our police department.
Actually, I believe if you stop and think about it, with the fact that a lot of the cases will be handled virtually, that probably won't amount to as many people as you might think, number one. Number two, that is certainly an issue that we will bring up with the sheriff and discuss. That, if he's having a group of people that are going to be over there providing security inside, we would certainly ask him that, he should, send some of those people out to patrol the outside of the court facility to check on things. What we would not be looking for Hamilton Township to post a police car out in front of that court facility, to handle things there. That's not to say if some disgruntled person leaves the court and has to be arrested there might not be a situation that could arise where Hamilton Township might get a call from the sheriff's officer saying, hey, look, we need some backup here. But I don't anticipate that that's going to be a common occurrence, or even, if it happens, it's going to be very, very infrequent, I would think.
Committee, any other questions? Well, Jim, Judge, thank you very much.
Let me give you my contact numbers. The office number is 609-343-2310.
And Jim, what's your social security number? I'd like to know.
I've done this at other.
He's giving it to everybody.
I've done this at other municipalities, and 609-892-0121. If you call and I don't recognize your number, leave me a voicemail message, because I get a lot of calls where I don't recognize numbers, and
He's
then
forewarned various vehicles.
but if I'll be happy to talk to you folks. And Mayor, if you need me to come out here again to meet with you, or you need to meet either with me or Mr. Miller being involved, or any member of council, I'm happy to do that. So
I'll be looking forward to the numbers, Jim.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us this
Thank you for
evening.
your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, it's good to see you.
All right, with that being said, we're going to move on to the addition, deletion of late agenda items to be considered for action tonight. additions, we have 5C, Ordinance 1964-2021, an ordinance to amend Code of the Township of Hamilton by establishing Chapter 135 entitled Cannabis Taxes and Civil Penalties. 7F, resolution constituting a lien on certain properties for property maintenance charges pursuant to Chapter 238 of the Property Maintenance Code. 7G, resolution authorizing the Township of Hamilton Planning Board to review a proposed amendment to the redevelopment plan for the entirety of the Township of Hamilton.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we'll move on to early public comment on agenda items. Remember, these are items excluded for public hearings. Is there anyone in the public signed up?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on. Next, discussion items, formal actions may be taken. The first one we have is 3A, which is the Open Space Trust Fund referendum.
Township Committee, I provided you a memo the end of last week concerning this. Bond Council put together a comprehensive memorandum about how you go about this process. He gave you everything plus the kitchen sink in his opinion. What I'd like to do is narrow down exactly what you would like to be included in the open space question. On the August 2nd agenda, you would have to do a resolution authorizing to be placed on the November ballot and state the question. The statute allows you to have, besides having acquisition, conservation, debt service, equipment maintenance items done. It also allows you to do farmland preservation, historic preservation, wetlands acquisition and preservation, Blue Acre projects, things of that nature. I believe that if the purpose is for pure open space, that is usually acquisition, conservation, debt service on existing open space recreational opportunities, and also the ability to spend the money on capital improvements to improve recreational opportunities in the community, whether you're spending the money to purchase and improve things or you're doing the debt service route and paying down a debt for improvement that you made on a project. So I'm just looking for some guidance so we could properly prepare the resolution for August 2nd as to, do you want to leave in the wetlands of farmland preservation, historic trust things, or do you would like to take those out of the draft that the Bond Council provided?
And just for the benefit of the public, this is a discussion on putting forth a referendum asking the public in November whether or not they want to set aside, Peter, I believe 2 cents?
Yes, sir.
2 cents on the municipal tax rate for preservation of open space here in Hamilton and for the things that Peter just described. They can be used for preservation, it can be used for debt service, and it can also be used for improvements. So that's what we're discussing, and Peter's obviously asking us if we want to narrow the scope down to eliminate some of those things, such as the floodplain protection and farmland preservation.
Yeah, on farmland preservation, the County Ag Board and the State Ag Board has a program for farms of 100 acres or greater. I don't see a role that the municipality has to play in getting into farmland preservation. There are avenues and money available if somebody wants to preserve the farm forever. They have options available to them now.
And the floodplain protection, can you just give us just a little more exactly what that's going to entail?
To me, that's the responsibility of the DEP for coastal wetlands or, wetlands for them to acquire wetlands to make sure that somebody doesn't attempt to purchase them and slowly fill them in. I know the community I used to work in, the DEP purchased a lot of wetlands in the back bays areas, and they maintain them in their name. The only wetlands that may exist in Hamilton Township that you would maybe have an interest reserving is any which may exist along the Great Egg Harbor River. But a lot of that land is privately owned along the river. So I really don't think that that's a place that you would want to be spending the open space money on. That doesn't benefit the community as a whole.
Committee, questions, comments?
Yeah, could you explain how having this open space trust fund works for the community? Is it those monies available for different things that we want to do? How is it?
Yes. When you adopt your annual budget, you have to have a public hearing on your open space plan for the upcoming year. A 2-cent tax will generate approximately $400,000 a year in Hamilton Township. So the first year you have it, you would say we collected our $400 and some thousand, and the upcoming year we're going to spend whatever portion of that the governing body chooses to spend. And you may say that we have the ability to buy a parcel of land adjacent to one of our existing parks for round numbers $100,000. We want to spend money towards paying down debt service on some other existing park that we have. And we're going to reserve $100,000 for some future unknown project at this time. So you have that discretion as you adopt the budget to determine what your spending plan is going to be from year to year.
Okay. So it's sort of like a savings plan.
Sort of, but I think you probably need to at some point in time early on in the process come up with, for lack of a better word, a master plan to say at Memorial Park, Underhill Park, Library Park, this is what your long-term goals are, and we're going to allocate the open space money to furthest of those goals. Or if you have a playground that you really need to redo, for instance, if you built one of those castles in the sky wood playgrounds with CCA lumber back in the 90s, like a lot of towns did, you may be looking to replace that, and it may cost $100,000 to replace that. And you may say, we're going to earmark open space money to take care of that playground, so we have it done for the next summer for the kids.
I had asked you, do we have a recreation trust fund? And
Yes, we do.
how much is in there?
Off the top of her head, she doesn't know, and I don't know either.
All right, very good. Okay.
Other questions? I'm good. And just to be clear, this is going to be put on for the entire voting population to make the decision on. Our job, again, is just to narrow it down. And obviously, if the Farmland Preservation is a duplication of services, I would suggest removing that. And the same with the floodplain protection, if in fact it's responsibility of the DEP anyway.
I would agree with that.
So the one open item is the Historic Preservation Trust.
Okay.
You have a historic district, and whether or not funds that come from here, would you want to allocate it for that? Or one of my personal reservations is if you tell people that you have historic preservation funds coming in that can be used for historic preservation, you may become a loan officer that people who own homes in the historic district may say, well, you're collecting this money for historic preservation. Can you front me some money because I have to comply with some standard? I want to make an improvement to my house. I really don't think you want to become a banker in that. So you can buy old property. I know there's been discussion about the railroad property. You can use open space money to acquire that because you're going to preserve it as open space available to the public. You don't have to call it historic preservation. You can still preserve it historically, but you don't need to use that title in your authorization for the 2-cent open space tax.
Well, I certainly don't want us to be in the loan business. Is there a way that we can write that out of this so that we're not being put on
Okay.
the spot.
If you put historic preservation as one of the things you're spending the money on, as a governing body, you'll set the guidelines as to what you're willing to do for historic preservation. All I'm saying is that you're going to get demands from people who live in that district about, well, you want me to maintain this character of the house in the 1880s or so. I physically can't do that. Can you give me a low-interest loan? I'll be very happy to fix up the house.
I could see the benefit, though, with various historic structures where we may want to participate in the rehabilitation of those because it may be centralized to future growth or bring a property back online. So I could see where there could be benefits to that.
Well, you could leave the historic preservation in for the question, and then if it is adopted, you have to adopt an ordinance which spells out exactly how the money's being spent. So you could define historic preservation as to in what circumstances you'll be participating in it. As I said before, if you were looking to acquire an historic property and preserve it in the name of the township, you can do that with open space money without including historic preservation as one of your goals and objectives, because you're acquiring public lands or public property. So this happens to be historic in nature. So is historic preservation in then for the question we're going to put on the ballot?
I think we need to narrow the scope of it. But
Within the next 2 weeks, I'll draft the resolution for the August 2nd meeting, which will have the ballot question on it. I'll work with Bob Salmon on the ballot question, and we'll circulate it to you. And after you have a chance to look at it, you can tweak it and make suggestions before it actually ends up on your agenda.
is that acceptable? Yeah. All right.
General consensus committee that floodplain protection and farmland is something.
You want us to do a straw vote on it?
No, you don't need it.
Okay.
That's the
Yes,
consensus that I
believe
wrote
that
down.
is the
Yes.
consensus. If anybody differs, please speak up.
What you're saying is that you'll come up with a plan for us to look at for our.
I'll give you a preliminary draft plan because until the thing gets approved, but to give you a sense of where it can go, and also a draft resolution. Bond counsel gave us the A to Z resolution. My intent is to edit that down to the things we just talked about, run it past Solicitor Sandman, and then once I get his sign off, then to circulate to you, hopefully get all that done within the next 2 weeks.
All right, I think you have direction, so we can move on from there. Next is B, policy of release of closed session minutes.
Okay, this is pretty simple. I discovered that you don't have a written policy on release of closed session minutes. It's an informal thing. Working with the township clerk, we've came up with a boilerplate resolution for you to adopt to establish a policy, which basically says that the clerk and the administrator get together in consultation with the solicitor to determine if the appropriateness of the closed session is concluded, that the minutes can be made public. When Rita reads the resolution every meeting, she says that once the confidentiality no longer requires that confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. We have an informal process of releasing them right now, and I really think that it's in the best interest of the community to make it a formal policy, and I didn't want to just put something on your agenda without briefing you on it first.
I believe it's just a little bit of housekeeping. It should be something simple to accomplish. If there's no questions, we'll move on to C, which is the discussion of the proposed bamboo ordinance.
Okay. The fire official, who also does your property maintenance for you, has identified that bamboo in certain areas is running rampant now. If you're familiar with this invasive species, that once you plant it is tubular in nature, this grows and grows and grows from one person's property to the next. And it does create some neighborhood disputes over who's taking care of the bamboo once it crosses a property line. So several towns in Atlantic County over the past few years have adopted bamboo invasive species ordinance, which puts that burden on the person who planted the bamboo in the first place. The other thing Chris has identified is that some people have used the bamboo as a screening device for certain things they're doing on their property that they're not supposed to be doing there. So he did some research, looked at other ordinances in Atlantic County, and the memo I issued last week, I attached a couple of the pictures he took, plus his recommended, ordinance, which his recommendation is to put it in the property maintenance code, since it is, vegetation is something that can be regulated in property maintenance. So if there's no objection, my practice with the governing body is that things like this that comes from the staff up, nothing gets put on the agenda in either ordinance or resolution form without the ability to have a conversation like this. So while, at the end of the meeting, I won't have a report to give you because I'm discussing all those matters now at the beginning part of the meeting.
And the violations and penalties portion of this is enforceable?
Yes.
Is there, can you give us other communities that have imposed this
Okay, I could.
ordinance?
Well, the one I used to work in adopted one back in 2018, and I copied the Linwood one when I wrote that one, and I forget who Linwood copied theirs from. And we hadn't taken, by the time I left after 5 years on the books, we hadn't had to take anybody to court for it. When the property maintenance inspector went out on the complaint, the people did respond in a timely fashion. There's a couple of methods for doing it. One is taking like a 12-inch steel plate and driving down, so as the tubular roots grow, they hit it and they don't continue growing. Or you go out there with your machete and you cut them down off your neighbor's property and you maintain them at your property line. I'm unaware of anybody challenging the bamboo ordinance to say it's a health, safety, welfare thing. You can't plant a hedge or something on your property and just let it grow into your neighbor's property. Some of the issues that we had in the neighboring town before we had the ordinances, the neighbor would say, it's on their property, they can cut it down. Well, they didn't plant it on their property. Why should they be responsible? If you ever try to cut down bamboo, it's not as easy as they make it look like on TV when they harvest it for furniture. Because the roots are very gnarly and deep and everything.
Yeah, I recently bought a property that has bamboo on it.
So for the next meeting, I'll have the ordinance refined to be introduced for your consideration.
Okay.
Committee, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on. This is a public hearing, adoption of ordinances. Ordinance 1961-2020, an ordinance amending a portion of Ordinance 1785-2015 to create and establish appellate jurisdiction of the Hamilton Township Planning Board with respect to issuance and/or denial of certificates of appropriateness and/or designation and/or de-designation of any structure or property as a historic landmark as established in the ordinances of Hamilton Township. This is a public hearing. At this point, I'd like to open up to the public for comments. Anyone in the public that wishes to speak on this particular ordinance? Cheryl, please.
Good evening. As you know, I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I've had this since 1979, so when it was formed. I'm just wondering first off, why they're doing this action, and secondly, in what I read, which is not what I'm seeing here on the agenda, it says a landmark and properties in the district. Am I right? That de-designation would apply to landmark properties as well as properties inside the historic district.
Would you please, Mr. Seaman?
It's not that it applies to the district or the outlying parcels. It applies to the decision that is, the planning board solicitor has interpreted the appellate jurisdiction of the planning board to be limited to those circumstances where it was only a certificate of appropriateness. This particular ordinance, I redid it, and then I redid it again to make it as simple as possible. And it doesn't apply to this district, this house, this property. It applies to this decision of the HDC, where the agreed party can go if they're not, if they don't agree with that decision.
Okay, it's strictly on decisions, and it's not that a person can come and say, go to the planning board and say, I want to be designated, having nothing to do with coming before the commission and complaining of our action. Right? Is that what you're saying, or no?
It is, but I would like to try a little different. What I'm saying is that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Seaman, could you speak a little closer to the microphone, bring it closer to your
What I'm saying, Cheryl, is that whatever the decision is of the HPC, whatever it is, whatever the subject matter is, whatever the decision is, if the person who receives that decision is not happy with it, they now have an appellate place to go, and that's the planning board. Up to now, there was an issue as to whether it was the zoning board, planning board, or Superior Court. And two lawyers could disagree on what the language made. I'm not saying that happened here. So to simplify the process, this ordinance allows all decisions of whatever kind, deals only with subject matter, to go to the planning board.
Okay, if they,
If they're not happy.
okay, all right, and then the de-designation. Is that, include that, even if they come to us for de-designation, we just deny it, then they can go to the planning board?
Precisely.
Okay, and it's always been, though, that if they didn't like, or if they didn't agree with our decision with the certificate of appropriateness, they've always been able to go to the planning board, having nothing to do with de-designation.
I don't know if it's always been that way, but the ordinance that I molded did say exactly what you said.
Yeah, it did, yeah, that's what I thought, okay. Oh, and has this, the changes, I know you said you have something about going to the Pinelands Commission, but what about the State Office of Historic Preservation? Doesn't this have to go to them too, when you make a change to our ordinance?
Usually that abides the event of adoption, but what I have done is I have already sent it to Andrea, and I've asked her for advice as to where we should go with it. I'm told she's a person that you guys deal with. She works for that division of state.
She's the head of the Certified Local Government Division.
Right, I'm waiting for her response.
Oh, okay, you haven't gotten a response.
I promised you that whoever has to approve it's going to approve it. The last time you were here, I promised you that whatever state agency has to approve it is going to approve. It's going to look at it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think, I said to you that we're certified local government, and I don't want to risk that status. I hate to see us lose that status.
This is a very simple ordinance.
Okay, thank you for clearing that. Thank you.
You're welcome, Cheryl. Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak, please?
Things happen. 283 Old River Road. We've been kicking this can around for a long time, so I want to thank you for listening and thinking about this, because I know it's been going on for a long time. I know I've been a royal pain over it. But it's important that we talk about it. I recognize that you guys have a lot bigger issues that impact a lot greater percentage of the population than pocket sites. So here's why it's really important that this amendment to the ordinance be passed. There's an incredible amount of discrepancy, inconsistency, ambiguity regarding these pocket sites, as they were identified in the ordinance 1238-96. So take you back in time a little bit. In June of 1995, ordinance 1205-95 was adopted, and that therefore amended the previous ordinance 1014-89. which changed the delineation of the historic district. And so in essence, what that did was it created a smaller geographic area surrounding Main Street. I have a copy of that ordinance. In that ordinance, all of the Main Street blocks and lots are listed out in detail. No pocket sites are listed. Now let's go to May of 1996. Ordinance 1258-96 was adopted, which then repealed 1205-95 in its entirety. That ordinance, which I also have a copy of, then identified and included 46 blocks and lots as pocket sites. So there was a year gap there where pocket sites weren't identified in an ordinance. So that's an issue right there. Don't know what the criteria was for how these pocket sites, we were told through this process over the last year that the pocket sites were always there. They just were then specified in this rewriting of the ordinance in May of 96. But based on the ordinance and what's available to the public, there's a gap of a year where they weren't identified. So, and I know exactly what I was doing in 1996, and I was tied to this property that I'm representing today, and nobody told me I was being identified in an ordinance. I didn't get a letter. My mother owned the property at the time. I questioned how that was done. I've gotten many different answers on how it was done, never the same answer twice. So this all came about because we applied for permits again in 2020 at the beginning of COVID. Prior to that, we had done major renovations in 2017. Prior to that, twice I bought this property. I bought it once with my sisters and then bought it again to have it exclusively. Through all those transitions and through all the permits that we went through the process through zoning and planning and got approved in 2017, we were told we were not a pocket site many times. We weren't part of any district. Then through some discovery of a clerical error, when we applied for permits again in 2020, we were told we were a pocket site, and that's when this whole debacle started rolling. So my question is, or I should say my concern, and another part of the ambiguity of all this is, how did we go for 20, 30, however many years where really didn't matter to anybody because we weren't considered a pocket site or on paper somewhere in some office. It wasn't important enough that it was noted in the different times we had applied for permits over the years. And then all of a sudden in 2020, it became a big deal. So as we worked through this with the HPC and ultimately we did get our certificates of appropriateness and we were able to move forward, but it raised a bigger issue for my husband and I in all these discrepancies. We wanted a public hearing, and I want to thank Bob Sandman as well because he helped facilitate that. You've always said from the beginning that everybody deserves a chance to be heard. And so leading up to our public hearing, my husband and I did a lot of our own research in how this all happened. They've talked to Andrea Tingy. I've talked to Andrea Tingy. She's one of the representatives at the state level. So prior to the public hearing, Andrea advised the HPC to bump us up into phase 2 of the current survey that's going on within the township. So there's a 3-phase survey that's being supported by grant money. Phase 1 was within the main district. I believe we're in phase 2 now. Pocket sites aren't going to happen until phase 3. We could be a year or so away from that. Andrea advised them they have the ability to put us up into phase 2 if we then wanted to be able to have another unbiased opinion on the eligibility of our property. They did not act on that recommendation. So we were disturbed by that. They had an opportunity to put us in phase 2 and they didn't act on it. So now fast forward to the public hearing that we had with them. I gave a lot of documentation to them leading up to it that I got from the state. I worked with Catherine Markapole. She's the head of the New Jersey State Historic Preservation Office. A few of the documents that I gave them include a 1987 survey that was conducted by them. On that survey, it declares my home as ineligible and not meeting criteria for registry. It was 1987. Then I gave them a copy of the current New Jersey Department, the New Jersey DEP HPO Registry of Historic Places, and it's listed by county and local municipality. All the Hamilton Township registered districts and landmarks are included in that. So let me read to you what it says about the ones in Hamilton Township. As I get to it, I'll tell you. So for the Maize Landing Historic District, and this was provided to us from the state, but it's available online to the public. The Maize Landing Historic District is identified as east and west main streets and intersecting streets. The only pocket sites that are listed here are the schooner in Weymouth, which I believe is a sunken ship, I think the Weymouth furnace. Long story short, they don't recognize the pocket sites. They don't meet the state and national registry criteria. Moving on from that, I gave him a copy of a 1982 survey that was provided, again, by the NJDEP-HPO, inclusive of all of River Road and the Clarkstown area. They gave us just the part that was relevant to my neighborhood. It has notations of all the residences within that neighborhood that were pre-1872. They're identified, not necessarily inclusive of any registries. However, my question is, then how come mine was the only home within that listing that became a pocket site? What about all these other pre-1872 homes that were identified on this 1982 survey? So despite all the documentation that I provided, my request for de-designation was denied by a 5-2 vote. I was told that I should have maybe considered hiring a historical architect to show my proof of eligibility. I've worked with the state on this. I have in writing from Kate, I want to read you her email. We've had many conversations via phone with her, and I have written confirmation from her that, I'll just read it to you. Dear Mr. Appleton, it was addressed to my husband, but I'm copied. Thank you for contacting the Historic Preservation Office. According to our records, your property at 283 Old River Road in Maize Landing is not listed, nor has been determined to be eligible for listing in the New Jersey or National Registers of Historic Places, either individually or as part of a historic district. According to our records, your property is only noted as identified in our online cultural resources, which is the Lucy map that we hear about, because of its inclusion in a previous survey done in 1987 in Maize Landing. However, it is determined that it is outside the boundaries of the New Jersey and National Register listed in Maize Landing Historic District. I have multiple other correspondences with her. So we want to be de-designated. I'm not disputing that my property's old. I'm the 6th generation of the direct lineage back to the person who built that house. It's been able to keep it in our family. It's our desire to continue to do that. I can tell you right now, my kids have seen what we've been through the last year, and they're like, screw that. We don't want any parts of this. We value the historic nature of our home, but who benefits from me being a pocket site? Because at this point right now, it's, according to everything the state has told us, it is simply a local designation. So rather than be applauded for the fact that I've invested so much into making this property nice again and making it safe again, because there were aspects of it that were not safe, I'm being subject to the opinions of some historic enthusiasts that want to regulate what kind of porch railing I can put up. And because of that, I have a problem. So thank you for listening. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Ms. Hopkins?
I'm listening to both sides, and I'm being a taxpayer. Communication's a two-way street. And if 10 years ago somebody sent me a letter and I didn't get it, and I don't have it around me, they should have some kind of evidence that it was transcribed to me. That's exactly what I would expect as a government employee, as a taxpayer. So I would ask the committee, the Township Committee, can we not ask the Historical Commission to go back and re-notify these people, certified mail, return receipt requested, and if there's an issue, so that they have evidence moving forward, and we don't have to put our township residents through this long duration again. Is there any consideration of that? That's it.
Mr. Samian, would you take a?
I can't answer that.
Thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm not aware of how this came about, other than what I've heard and read with respect to this particular case. But I do know this. What's in front of this committee tonight is providing a mechanism for aggrieved persons. And that mechanism goes beyond the scope of certificates of appropriateness and specifically includes de-designation, designation, and the way that it's drafted, I think it includes any kind of decision from the HPC, providing due process to an aggrieved party to take an appeal to some agency, where up to now there has been a question as to which agency had the appellate jurisdiction. What could happen with respect to Survey 2 and 3, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area. So all I do know is what I said, and that is this finally puts to rest in the most simplest form I could an issue that's in front of first the HPC, then the planning. And now there can be no dispute among lawyers as to what that language says.
I think that's an important point. I mean, at the end of the day, the resolution for any discrepancy at the HPC level is now going to be settled in front of a planning board that's made up of, just like the HPC and others, volunteers of this community, as opposed to attorneys in the court system. And I think that's important to note that, the planning board consists of 7 full-time volunteers and 2 alternate volunteers. So I think it's a very fair process in order to come to a fair and equitable solution to anything that might arise in their own hometown. So I think it's a great step forward.
I do not agree with Mr. Kane. I think that we have arrived here in our community with a HPC, designations, and I feel as though if they have a very complicated, sounding what was presented to us was a very complicated thing, I think it should go to the Supreme Court to make a decision. If you have a place for 6 generations, wouldn't you want it to stay historic and not become, just an ordinary home? There is a disagreement as to whether it was designated a pocket site, wasn't, blah, 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 blah. I think it should go beyond the planning board. The planning board is composed of people that might not even really agree with the HPC doctrine or whatever. I think that it really should go on to the Supreme Court. So that's my opinion.
Judy, do you have any idea how much it would cost the litigants for this township to take a case to the Supreme Court? First of all, there's only 2 ways to get there. One is a dissent in the appellate division, and the other is by a writ of certiorari. That's a big, big, big number.
I've seen litigation in Pennsylvania where it was taken to the Supreme Court, and that's the only place where there was a just decision.
I'm not arguing with you.
Okay? I'm not familiar with the cost that go to this. If the planning board can agree to, and the HPC, agree to a resolution, but I don't want to see it just be a resolution that anybody can go to any time. I think it should be definitely an individualized decision, and that it doesn't open the door for all the pocket sites that we have. So, does your ordinance or does it open the door for everyone to, if they're in disagreement with the things that the HPC have come to a decision on in regards to a pocket site, is this a decision that is a precedent case and available to everyone who has a disagreement with the HPC? Or is it a once and done case? I think it
Any case
opens the
before
door.
the Supreme Court stands on its own 2 feet. This is much more limited in an approach to provide due process to people. I can't pass judgment on what should or should not be a pocket site. I can't pass judgment on what a superior court, an appellate division court, or a Supreme Court would do with any issue. So the answer to your question is, what you have in front of you is the first step to allowing people who, like some folks right now, wanted to go somewhere and have an issue resolved. This provides that every single person who fits in the designated area, whether it's a pocket site or a historic district, has a remedy. That's all it does.
And Mr. Salmon, no offense, but I think any time we can keep an attorney out of the mix or attorneys out of the mix and have a decision made, again, based on individuals that have a vested interest in the community, that's in fact why they volunteer, I think is a good thing. And I think it, and let's not assume that there's a foregone conclusion on the outcome of a decision. I mean, those individuals are going to take whatever is brought before them, and they're going to make an educated decision based on what they see presented to them. So, it's a more efficient manner, and it's in a manner in which, again, individuals of this community will be making a decision instead of a court of law. So
Well,
I think it's a great alternative.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out that any decision of the planning board is appealable to Superior Court. So if the interested party is not satisfied with the decision the planning board render, then they could spend their money and take it to court. So that option is not precluded because the planning board, they're exhausting what they call the administrative remedy by taking it to the planning board first.
Thank you.
I think one thing we got to remember also is the ordinance from 2015 gave people the opportunity to not be designated a historic site. What we're doing here is making it so that we can do that people can do that. The ordinance in 2015 clearly stated that if somebody wanted to make the lighthouse historic, well, the Singing Tower, whatever you want to call it, they would have to send a letter, certified, return receipt to the owner so that they know that they're being placed there. And then they had a way to, I believe it's 10 days to say, no, I want to have a hearing and I don't want to be a historic site. I question why we couldn't just go back and do that with that 2015 ordinance and just say, you know what, the HPC should send a letter certified to every single property that's considered historic, and then start from scratch right from there and give everybody the opportunity to do this. I was told we couldn't do that, so this is the way that we're getting to that point. And then another thing that I think is, I find kind of ironic is here's somebody who can show the lineage that her family was the original builder of that house. They should have carte blanche to do whatever they want on that house. They're the original family. It'd be like if somehow George Washington was able to stay alive for 300 years and then the Historic Preservation Committee come in and say, no, George, you can't do that to your house. It's the same family. And that really means nothing. I'm just throwing it out there. It just seems ironic to me. The Kane House on Main Street, that's been in the family for however many years. There's a couple of houses in town that the original family is still in that house, but they have to go to the HPC to ask permission. Can I change my windows? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it just seems a little odd to me. But the reason why we're here is because 2015, the ordinance gave people a way to not be designated historic. So now we're making it so that people can still get there. It's just adding another ordinance to the whole situation.
All
Do
right,
you
at
have
this
a-
time, is
do you
there
have
anyone
a-
else in the public that wishes to speak on this subject? I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Continue discussion. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or concerns from committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for 4A.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Ms. Martino, could we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chief,
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard,
Yes.
Mrs. Lang,
No.
Mr. Talley,
Yes.
Mayor Kane.
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no, motion carried.
Next, we'll move on to introduction of ordinances. The public hearing will be held on August 2nd, 2021. First, we're going to start with A, Ordinance 1962-2021, an ordinance to amend Chapter 225 of the Township Code entitled Parks and Beaches, specifically Article 1, entitled Cove Area, limiting swim times. Peter, you want to
Yeah,
give a little?
the purpose of this ordinance is to allow the police department to write a summons for someone swimming when lifeguards are not present. We have signs posted there saying you can't do that, but there's no statutory authority for them to cite them for that. So we amended the section which says that it's a ordinance violation if you're swimming when lifeguards are not present.
Questions, comments, committee?
I think this ordinance is important because, you know, although I don't like to deny our township people the right to go into the water at the cove, we do have a liability situation there. And if someone should drown during that time on Monday and Tuesday, when we have no lifeguard, that presents a problem to our township. And I think that this is one way in which we could sort of curb that decision by a number of residents who choose to go into the water no matter whether there's a sign there or not.
And it's my understanding, I mean, that, look, we're not out to punish our residents. You know, I think a warning would be in order, but if in fact that compliance is not had, then a summons would be issued. And, you know, I think it's a much needed improvement to the ordinance. So, committee,
I'm a huge proponent of personal responsibility, but we are in a litigious society, and it's just, it leaves the township open to the possibility of losing a lot of money and having to defend itself, and if somebody were to drown, God forbid, when they're not supposed to be out there at all. Yeah, it's frustrating, but unfortunately, it's the road that we're on. So these things are needed.
any other questions or comments? I appreciate your comments, Mr. Vitale. Public hearing will be on August 2nd, 2021 for this. Hearing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Rita, roll call, please.
Chief,
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard,
Yes.
Mrs. Lang,
Yes.
Talley.
Yes.
Mayor Kane.
Yes.
All yes, motion carried.
Next, we'll move on to B, Ordinance 1963-2021, an ordinance of the Township of Hamilton adopting an amendment to the redevelopment plan for the entirety of the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, to permit cannabis establishments, distributors, and delivery services. This is a lot of effort and time has been put into this ordinance. We've had numerous meetings, numerous get-togethers on it. It's been changed and changed again and again, and I believe we now have a final product which protects the township and is what the public would expect for us to do. So, Peter, have anything you want to add on this, or?
I think Emily's here, if she wants to talk about the redevelopment aspect of this ordinance.
Please.
Good evening. My name is Emily Givens, Redevelopment Counsel for the Township. What we worked on together collectively, collaboratively, with Mr. Miller and Mr. Sandman's office, we had the chief involved, Mayor Kane, Mr. Patali, going over the best approach to this new legislation that allows these types of the 6 different classes of marijuana licenses. You're required to opt out or opt in by August 21st of 2021. And so that's why we're doing this now. We don't have regulations yet. They come out August 21st, 2021. So what this particular amendment to the redevelopment plan does, it allows for a second layer of control over allowing for these particular uses in certain areas within the township. In order for any person, any entity to utilize the zoning that allows for these particular uses in the township, they have to enter into a redevelopment agreement with the township. That will help to maintain a certain level of control over the types of licenses that are coming into the township, the location, the hours of operation, in a different manner than you might if you were just adopting a zoning amendment to allow for these uses in the industrial park or in the agricultural zones. So this adds a separate layer. Because we don't have those regulations yet, the collective decision was made that this redevelopment plan amendment would give a better sense of protection to the township. It also will allow for a specific change to be made. This ordinance can be amended if there's a specific project that comes in after the presentation is made to committee. If the committee is in favor of a particular project but doesn't quite fit the standards that are set in this plan, then the plan can be amended. And but that will be, again, a collaborative effort between the township and the potential licensee. Those licenses have not been given out. We are not sure how many licenses are going to be distributed for certain things, or who may qualify, who may want to locate in the township. But this is also offering, there's a secondary ordinance that's on the agenda this evening that allows for imposition of taxes. So there's a revenue stream that will come into the township by having these types of businesses in the township. At this time, this redevelopment plan amendment introduced, if it is introduced this evening, then it will be referred over to the planning board for the planning board to vet the ordinance, make comments, and have some time to look through it, make recommendations back to the committee, and make a determination for consistency with the master plan, just like any other redevelopment plan that the committee would adopt. So they have their level of control. And again, just like any other application for development, this will go back to the planning board should a site plan application be submitted pursuant to this redevelopment plan amendment. I think that we've crafted something that provides protection to the township, but that also allows the township to take advantage of this opportunity and make that control the growth and the progress in the township in a way that's going to be beneficial to the residents and to the business.
I think one of the comments Ms. Gibbons made is it's very important to know that the state has not told us what their requirements are going to be. And this was a way for us to basically control our own destiny and have control over it, as opposed to if we stood by and did nothing, then we're subject to what the state imposes on us for a period of 5 years. It is also, I think, important to note that I believe currently the legislation calls for 27 licenses.
It may be 37, but
37.
it is a
Split.
low number, so, yeah.
So this opportunity might not present itself, but again, I think controlling our own destiny and putting forth an ordinance that designates what we feel as a township should happen in our community is the right way to go, as opposed to waiting and allowing the state to dictate to us, so.
And not all of the licenses are going to be permitted in all of the zones. So, for example, in your agricultural district, classes 1 through 4, manufacturing, wholesale, distribution, those are going to be permitted in the agricultural district, but not in your village commercial. And so the body of the ordinance sets forth all of the zones that are included within your township and whether or not and what type of license is going to be permitted in those zones. I'm not going to go through all of those tonight, but the planning board will have the opportunity again to review all of those, and will make any recommendations or any changes that they would like to see, if any, back to the committee.
Committee, questions, comments?
I have a question. When the state comes out with its regulations, doesn't that oversee whatever we come out with?
So what we are doing is we are creating the areas within the township that these particular licenses are going to be permitted to operate. We are not setting forth the regulations. The regulations are going to come from the state. This just gives us the ability to say, yes, we would like to have some of these types of licenses operating in the township if the opportunity presents itself. And this is where we'd like to see them, in the agricultural zone, in the industrial business park. And there are certain limitations on distance between facilities, and standalone facilities are being required. But as far as the regulations go, without knowing what those are, it's kind of like a catch-22, because you have to act by August 21st to say whether you opt in or whether you opt out. But August 21st is when the state is required to issue their regulations. So in an abundance of caution, we're moving forward with this extra layer of redevelopment agreement being required so that the township can take the time that it needs to review those regulations as they come out and ensure that any license that is established in the township follows those regulations and the township is fully protected. We're just adding in a little bit more time for ourselves by doing it in this way.
Committee, any other questions or concerns?
What is the ability of the township to opt in, opt out? If you say, I want to opt in under certain conditions, I don't want 27, I want 10, or is there a sort of an in-between?
Well, that's how we've crafted for statewide, there's going to be about 37 licenses issued.
Okay.
So they're not all going to land in Hamilton Township, but the way that it's been crafted, we worked with the Vince Palestina's office, Craig Hurlis, to look at mapping to ensure that we are not going to have overlapping sites. And we wrote that into the body of the ordinance so that there is going to be specific distance between any establishments in certain areas. In the business park, Chief pointed out that you don't want to have this next to the recovery center. So we're cognizant of other uses that are in certain areas, schools. So that's how we crafted the ordinance itself. So you're not going to see 27. You're not going to see 10 all located, concentrated in one particular area. And for any of the, if an establishment were to come to the township and open up operations, any employee gets vetted by the commission. And so they do their background checks and they do other things that, I think that a lot of people would make them feel more comfortable with the way the operations are done. And we'll find out what the security requirements are and other requirements once we see the regulations. But unfortunately, there's a lot of unknown here. But we're required to act, and you don't want to miss that opportunity. If you opt out completely, you can then opt back in. But by that time, licenses might be issued and locations have been chosen, and you don't really want to miss out on that opportunity, especially with the potential for that revenue stream through the tax ordinances.
So this will yield us a 2% tax, is
Well, we're
that?
not to that yet, Judy. That'll be on the next, let's
Next
take
ordinance.
this one, and then please ask your question when we introduce the next one, if we so choose to.
Okay. Can you give any concrete examples as to where you think one of these places should be, establishment? Is it just a general overall, or is it going to be next to Walmart, or is it going to be,
So the
next
different,
to a liquor store, or?
the hope is that they're not next to liquor stores. They're not permitted to be operating in an establishment that serves food or an establishment that serves alcohol. The location is going to be dependent upon the licensee, the type of license, the class of license that the person has or the entity has. And then working with the township through a redevelopment agreement, you're going to be able to locate that particular establishment in a place that satisfies all of the criteria that the township wants it to meet, as well as the desire of the potential entity that's going to operate.
Yeah,
So
just
you're
to be,
working cooperatively.
in every instance, they must be standalone. They cannot be incorporated into any other business. If you go through the ordinance, Ms. Link, it is specifically spelled out in there, areas for the different classifications, distances, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's this, when I tell you that hundreds of man hours was spent on this, I think, was that an understatement, do you believe?
No.
Yes. So, it's again, this is controlling our own destiny if this comes to Hamilton Township, as opposed to being subject to what the state will impose upon us.
Well, if the state imposes something upon you, you still have to go along to their regulations, right?
Well, we're going to have to follow the regulations, but this gives us the ability to work within the confines of the regulation that's going to be of the most benefit to the township and most protective to the township.
Yeah, I know. I think there was an idea spread that where the Pony Club was, and now it's been torn down, would be an ideal location. And I know when the Pony Club was there and we had our Rotary meetings, it was a harrowing experience getting in and out of that location. So it would, to me, it would require, if we chose that location, that the state would be, saying, hey, yes, we can reconfigure that or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mrs.
this
Link,
ordinance doesn't do that. That would be
Over-
step down the road, and if that were to come into play. But
Okay.
Ms. Link is maybe just a little bit confused. I think she's referring to the clubhouse property, and that property has been approved through a redevelopment agreement for a medical marijuana facility, and that plan was fully approved by the planning board at its last meeting. So that project is now moving forward.
See, that was passed by the planning board?
Yes, it was. At the last meeting, it was unanimously passed too by the planning board. I'm sorry, the second to last meeting, correct?
Oh, why was
Second
it
to
passed
last
by the
meeting.
planning board?
So it would have been
Why was it passed by the planning board? We don't even have the permission
Because
yet.
it's not recreational marijuana, it's
Yeah.
medical marijuana, which is not covered under this ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a separate, a whole separate legislation that allowed for the medical marijuana.
So how about the traffic pattern in that area? Was that considered at the planning board?
Every traffic is always a consideration of any planning board application.
So anyone object to that at the planning board?
We heard testimony from the professionals, and that testimony was acceptable to the planning board, and again, the application passed.
I'm gonna ask for minutes from the planning board on that because I'm not happy.
Okay. You know, you're capable of attending those planning board meetings. The planning board meetings are, the agendas are posted. I'm sure as a committee person, you receive a copy of what's happening at each meeting. It was clearly explained in there that cannabis was on the agenda for final site plan approvals.
No, I did not receive that.
All right, so I'll go back to the ordinance at hand. Is there any other questions or comments regarding the ordinance that we are currently have in front of us? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Rita, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cheek,
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard,
Yes,
Mrs. Link,
Yes, with reservation.
Mr. Vitale,
Yes.
Mayor King.
Yes, I would like to thank those that volunteered their time. Of course, I'd like to thank the redevelopment attorney, our solicitor, deputy mayor, for the time spent, Palestine's office. Again, a tremendous amount of man hours were put into this to protect this township, and I vote yes. Next, we'll move on to 5C. This is introduction 1964-2021, an ordinance to amend the Code of Township of Hamilton to impose a local cannabis transfer tax and user tax and establish civil penalties for violation of an ordinance or regulation governing the number of cannabis establishments, distributors, or delivery services that may operate in the Township of Hamilton or their location, manner, and times of operation.
This is just the penalty provision, the taxation provision that goes with what you've already approved.
So with the ordinance we just passed, there is a provision for the township to impose a tax on, to the benefit of residents on not only retail sales, but wholesaling, distributorship, and growing. So that's exactly what you have in front of you. I'm sure the majority read the ordinance and understand it, but at this point, if there's questions and or comments, now's your time. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion.
second,
I have a second. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek,
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard,
yes,
Mrs. Link,
Yes,
Mr. Vitale.
Yes.
Mayor King.
Yes.
All yes and
Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have items A through 7.
award of business contract.
Oh, thank you, Rita. Forgive me. Next, we have 6 awards of bids, contracts, and change orders. First, A, resolution amending Resolution 2020-0416 to change vehicle purchase to a 2021 Ford Edge SE four-wheel drive from Hetrick Fleet Services under state contract, cost not to exceed $27,870.
So moved.
I have a motion. Second. We're spending money. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek,
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard,
yes,
Mrs. Link,
yes,
Vitale.
Yes.
Mayor King.
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Next, we have resolution awarding contract for Beach Owner 2021-06 to Gasserboro All-Terrain Vehicles, Inc., Cartersville, Georgia, for the amount not to exceed $54,500. Understand that these funds are certified from the Clean Communities Grant in the amount of, we have two different ones that would equal the total amount, $28,345.38, $26,154.62. Questions, comments, or a motion, please?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Read a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Tally?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Well, anytime we can get something that benefits the township and have it paid for by other funds, that's a wonderful thing, so I vote yes. Next, we have 6C, resolution for change order number 1, Trinity Code Inspections LLC, on-site inspection and plan review for electrical subcode bid 2021-03. There is no net change.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. D, next we have resolution authorizing the mayor and township clerk to sign the contract with MISPA Volunteer Fire Company for the purchase of Block 508, lots 1, 2, 3, 17 through 24, MISPA Fire Building and Grounds.
Mr. Mayor, this is just a formality. It's costing us $1 to do the closing. Closing documents are prepared. The chief and I will talk tomorrow. I anticipate that we can complete the closing by the end of this week or no later than next week.
Ms. Lindsay, do we have $1 in the budget? We do, okay, so we have the funds. Again, this is a long time coming. It's exciting to get to this point, one step closer to getting the vision out there and MISPA realized, so. Questions, comments, or motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Tally?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
Rita, do you have the contract here?
I did.
Before I leave, can you give it to the mayor? I'll take the signed contract with you.
Okay. I don't have my seal. Is that okay?
We'll figure it out.
You can go back to the office with me if you don't mind.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
All right.
Okay, now I'll move on to the consent agenda. Okay, Rita?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll go item 7A through the late additions of F and G. Motion? Comments? Questions?
F and G.
Yes, they were the late agenda.
Oh, the later
Yeah.
agenda, okay.
Committee, anything you want to pull for further discussion? We move part of it, move all of it? You pull F. You want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to pull F.
Okay, so there is a motion. Are you approving the rest of the agenda?
Sure.
Sure. There's a motion, second? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, Mr. Vitale, 7F. Floor is yours.
I just wanted to pull it because I honestly didn't have the time to look at it because I was in a meeting before this meeting. Mr. Miller, do you have anything on this?
We sent this property owner 7 violation notices to clean up their property. They failed to comply with any of them. So under our code, we're allowed to enter onto their property, effectuate the cleanup, and then place lien against the property, recoup our costs. So this resolution is authorizing that lien to be placed on the property in the amount of $3,750.
There are pictures included in the back, guys, gals.
That junk.
I mean, obviously, this is due to an inspection by, or a complaint that property maintenance went out there and checked it, and as you can see by the pictures, there was reason for it.
I'll motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Rita, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Okay, next we'll move on to 8 personnel. First, we have A, resolution appointing Jeremy Hartman as a part-time communications officer for the police department at a rate of $16.89 an hour, effective 7/7/21.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link? Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
All right, B, we have authorization to advertise for full-time police officers. As you know, we just recently went through interviews, and we've hired 4 officers. It's going to take some time for them to come up to speed. The chief has outlined that we have other individuals going offline for either medical and or retirements, which is going to leave us short. And we've exhausted our list, right, Chief? So we currently do not have a workable list to pull from, so it facilitates the necessity to go out and advertise once again.
Moving B.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we'll move on to 7C. This is a resolution to change position status of Adam Burke from regular full-time laborer to regular full-time truck driver / laborer 2 at $36,557.32 annually, effective 6/23/2021.
Isn't it 8C, not 7C?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Filling an empty spot. Brett? So moved.
There's no change in headcount, I guess that answers your question, correct? All right, I have a motion.
Second?
I have a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
All right, next, I'll entertain a motion for minutes, regular meeting minutes of June 21st, 2021.
Second?
Motion second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye, opposed, none, ayes have it. B, minutes, special meeting of June 29, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Read a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Vitale?
Yes.
Yes. Next, we have C, special executive session minutes of June 29, 2021.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
And someone else is going to have to motion this other than Mr. Vitale because he's not going to touch this. D, bill list, total $6,974, or I'm sorry, $6,974,164.75.
So moved.
Motion,
Second.
second, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor King?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Don't sound so enthused. Mr. Miller?
I have nothing to report this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Solicitor?
Just have one thing to report. At the last meeting, I was directed and authorized to take action with respect to stormwater maintenance bonds at Victoria Point. Excuse me. On investigation, I learned that there had been litigation between the association and the developer that may have an impact on what we decide to do and might end up saving us money. So at our request, and I've dealt with Steve Philippone and the developer on this, we obtained a 60-day extension of those bonds to give us 60 days to make a decision. So I'm just letting you know, I took no action yet.
I'll go back to my earlier comments. If we can keep the attorneys out of it and they can come to an amicable resolution, that's best for all parties.
Sometimes
not
it's just
all.
a conversation.
Not all. He doesn't want to be excluded.
Mr. Engineer.
Yeah, Mayor and Committee, I just have a few items. First, Lake Lenape Dam, I just want to report that we had our monthly dam committee meeting last Monday on the 28th. At that meeting, we discussed with the county, the powerhouse application is still under review at DEP and Pinelands. WSP, the design engineer, is currently under contract to design the dam. A couple items we went over with the county. At the appropriate time, we will bring the county engineer's office and WSP here to our committee meeting to give us a presentation. That time will come and the dam committee members will make a suggestion or recommendation. It's likely to be when we do have approvals to put the powerhouse out to bid, and at that time, we will probably have a conceptual dam design. So we can expect the county and WSP to come and give a presentation. Another item we've asked the county for, and I'm expecting this any day, Deputy Mayor Patali had asked me to request of the county copies of all bridges within our township, the inspection reports. We'd like to get a heads up and take a look at the inspection reports. So the county is gathering those inspection reports for all other bridges in our township, and I expect those any day. Cotton Mill Bridge, we know that the bridge opened up on Friday, the June 25th. I just want to report, that was actually 3 months ahead of their construction contract scheduled for opening, which is a good thing. New York Avenue Bridge, in communication with the county, the project will be bid out in mid-July, which is in a week or two from now, to 3 qualified contractors. I reported last committee meeting, the precast decking for that bridge was ordered by the county. The delivery date of that decking is October 8th. So the county is indicating to me that that bridge should be completed mid-November. So that's when we can expect New York Avenue to open up again. The Public Works pole barn is nearing completion. I reported that a couple of weeks ago, that the contractor was finishing up some insulation on the pole barn. The last item I want to report is there's a grant application that's available to us, and it's entitled Safe Routes to Schools, and it's been suggested that we prepare an application for grant application for pedestrian safe routes to school, children's safe routes to school from Main Street, or this will be along Farragut Avenue from Main Street where St. Vincent de Paul is, take us a route down through Shaner School and continue down to 9th Street. And that will be a continuous safe route for school children. We think it would be a good application in that the upgrades that we would make to crosswalks, sidewalks would service to schools. So we think it'll be a very good application. I'll put that application together pretty quickly, and we'll need a resolution for that. But just wanted to report that I'm working on that also.
Great. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with, thank you for the update, Steve. Township Committee, Judy?
I was approached today at CVS by a gentleman who was inquiring about the bridge at Spoonie's Marina.
I have a report. I can report on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
I contacted 2 different people from NJDOT. The highest ranking was Vanessa Meads. She contacted the state and the resident engineer. The work that's occurring at the Spoonie's Bridge, Spoonie's Marina Bridge, is the state is putting together some devices, they've had survey crews out there, they're placing devices on the underside of the bridge to measure the level of the water. They want, there's devices that will shoot a signal down to the water level that they will start statistically finding out what the level of the water is. There is absolutely no plans to do any reservation, reconstruction, closure, absolutely nothing on the horizon for that bridge. A couple of years ago, they did some routine maintenance on the underside of the bridge when I was asked to look into that, but there is absolutely no bridge reconstruction or closure scheduled whatsoever for that bridge.
Okay. Yeah.
Anything else?
That is, you know, there's hearsay that the only thing holding that bridge is rebar. That's not true?
That's not true.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make it a statement so that people worried about the trucks going over that bridge, especially since we had the occurrence in Florida where the terrible incident that happened there. People are looking more for that type of repair being done in our county. So I just brought that to your attention. That was a concern.
And I think it's a good question to ask, because I was presented with that question a couple of weeks ago, but I think that's what prompted Deputy Mayor Vitale to say to me a month ago, what do you think the condition of the rest of the bridges are in our township after what happened in New York Avenue? So that's what prompted me to contact the county. We want to take a look at it firsthand and be ahead of the curve.
Okay.
So I think it's a good question.
Okay. Very good. All right, that's all I have.
Deputy Mayor?
That's not to say that every year there's a contract that goes out with the DOT, emergency bridge repairs. So that's not to say that you might see whoever the low bid contractor is, I believe it was Mount or IEW, you might see them show up there to do some work. You know, like Steve said, they worked there a couple of years ago. So don't come back to us and say, you said nothing was going on there, because there's always a chance that something could pop up there. That being said, happy that Cotton Mill Bridge is open. Let everybody know, once Comcast gets their cable squared away, then the temporary bridge is coming down. Everybody, the temporary bridge is coming down. The crane will go, the barge will go. I think it looks fantastic. Came out really, really nice. A lot of hard work there. Kudos to everybody that was involved. I want to say with the bridge, one of the things that happened was that cut our town in half. So Maize Landing Volunteer Fire Company couldn't get to one side of town very easily. So once again, Bobby Hamilton offered up his garage to park engine 1812 in there. So we kept it at his house, in his garage, for the last 18 months, however long that bridge was closed. And firefighters responded to his house. And that's a big deal for our town. That's a really good thing. He's away. I think we're going to get a little something for him when he's back in town. A little thank you to Bobby Hamilton, and of course all the other firefighters that responded to his house, because that means they were keeping their gear, smelly, smoky gear, in their car, and it's not fun, but they do it, and we all appreciate that. Coming up this weekend, dragon boat races. We'll be over at the lake. It's a good time. There's a lot of people there. If you have time, go down. It's at Lenape Park East, correct? It is still there. No?
Yeah, it is.
I'm looking at Sue. I believe it's at Lenape Park East.
Yeah, it is.
It's a fantastic time. I think it's too late for you to sign up. I'm not sure. I did it one year. I almost died. I ended up in the back of a rescue squad rig, but that's because I'm not in shape anymore. But it was fun.
See,
So if
you're
you don't
allowed to
mention
laugh,
it-
I'm not.
Well, it is a fundraiser.
It's a fun race. It's a good time. So if you don't have anything else to do, head down there. We
Just
went-
an interjection. We did open our parking lot at Young Skating Center for the additional
Oh,
parking.
they're going to need it. They're going to need it. Thank
yeah,
you.
So,
And that's really all I have to say. It's hot. Drink water, hydrate, have a good time. Reagan, Maddie, miss you, love you. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Mr. Sharp?
I just like, I'm happy to hear that we're considering the grant application for Safe Routes to School. I know there is an opportunity to get a decent amount of state funds for that. I'd also like to recognize the contributions of the Green Team. They've managed to get a close relationship with Rutgers, who has been helping out with the impervious grounds study, ground study. And also a relationship with the DEP. And they might be able to offer some suggestions to the writing of the grant for the safe routes. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Cheek?
Yes. Right now, I personally would like to thank all our volunteer firemen and first responders. Over the weekend in Pennsylvania, there was a 35-year-old man. His last call, his bags were packed going back home to Canada. Went into a house and never came out. His last call, and I just want to recognize that that's what they put themselves through as volunteers. And for that, I thank them all right now.
That's very nice.
yeah, I would reiterate that.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. First, I'd just like to just bring up the bridge being open, obviously. There was no ribbon cutting or pomp and circumstances, so I'm personally waiting for a special occasion to drive over it. But I did notice that already you can see that fortunately traffic has eased coming into town because now we have another avenue. But I do want to point out that, and it was mentioned, that there is a Main Street speed mitigation plan that is in its final stages. It will be introduced and hopefully put into effect in the very, very near future. We understand, we heard the complaints, and I can say that the police department is going to step up, has stepped up patrols there and enforcement. So until this plan gets put in place, it's nice to know that they're out there. We got some good news. Carl and I were both in meetings prior to this. We did get some good news from the county commissioners on the New York Avenue Bridge. They awarded a contract this evening for pieces of the substructure and pilings, not for the actual bridge itself. By doing it, they expect to cut 18 weeks off of the total time schedule. The bridge itself, as was reported earlier, is going to be a prefab structure. So that will cut time off, and the design phase is currently wrapping up, and it looks like they're still on track for the fall, which I think is an aggressive timetable, but let's hope they can make it happen. So that is getting the attention it needs, and that's all I have this evening. So with that, I will open it up to the public. Is Ms. Fetty, please come down.
Well, you brought up the 7F about the property maintenance.
Yes.
I was planning on asking about this anyhow. By ordinance, people are supposed to put their trash cans back within 24 hours, back off the street. Bring them out 24 hours prior to, and then put them away within 24 hours after. And won't get picked up for recycling until next week, so it's been out there for the whole holiday weekend. And now today is Tuesday, it's been out for a weekend. You know, we got another week. I called, I reported, but according to what I've been told by, in prior incidents in calling and reporting the inspectors, they would send a letter to the property owner, and the property owner has 30 days to clear up the problem. So, and he says most of the time they'll go out there in 29 days and clear it up. This is not fair to us. And I think there should be some changes made with the property maintenance code somehow, that these certain issues can be addressed immediately, and that we don't have to wait 29 days to have an issue straightened out.
I see Mr., our administrator, Mr. Miller, writing diligently over there, so
I hope you understand that.
I certainly do, Cheryl, and that's why we have that. Yes,
That's why we have a problem.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank
Your
you.
comments are appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, since we have additional.
Ladies first. Ms. Hopkins?
I wanted to make two comments regarding the board integration and board consolidation. The first thought I had was in
We can't hear you. We can't hear you. You have to get closer to the mic.
was in the court integration or consolidation. As the gentleman was running through the displays, it dawned on me that their transition in this program, it sounded like a big bang approach. And we had an opportunity, I would like to ask the committee, to maybe ask them for a transition that talks about maybe phasing in one town at a time, letting it run, and then lessons learned applied, and the second one putting in. The second thing is the transition out. I'm listening to his numbers, and I'm running it through my head. The ROI, we're that efficient. It makes me a little, I just couldn't embrace his example without some concrete numbers. So I was thinking maybe we could ask him, just put our numbers out there and let's see where it's at. But the transition out that allows us, if this becomes onerous, or if it becomes expensive to handle the township, that we can elect a transition out for a period of time, and we're not stuck with the program for more than a year.
I appreciate that, thank you. And you know, at such time when the numbers are proved out, they will be presented to the public. So, Mr. Cortez?
How are you doing, folks? My name is Anthony Cortez. I'm a long-time resident here in Farmland Township. Came last week to check to see about this fire company and what's going on with them. Nothing was told me about it. And now I see it's on a contract, some property or something like that. Why are we buying it from when it was the people? Property.
Bob,
I got from a resident, a long-time resident from there, which is the Arquette family. They told me that they had received a call from this township that they would take the plaque down and take it home. If not, they want to trash it. And it's also the American flag that's there, the pole that they donated to that fire company, and the plaque that's on the wall. And I'm ashamed of that. Of the family, because of what was told to the family. They're long-time residents here. That was their grandfather. The grandson is the one that received the call. That's their grandfather's plaque. And that family put up the plaque. I don't know what you're doing, I don't know what's going on, but they're parking up the wrong tree. I have not had no communication what's going on with fire. I'm a long-time fireman there, I'm a lifetime member. I have not received anything. So I wish it be resolved as quick as possible. And I see that it looks like you're trying to resolve the municipal fire company. That's all I can say.
As to the second issue, the person who told you that they were told to remove the plaque, do you know who made that call to them to tell them that?
No, but I know his grandson is, then
many know about it. And if you wanted to come here for the family, I got this about 2, 3 days ago.
Because I'm assuming that the
That's-
building is
that's a shame.
standing
I
there.
had to hear that.
The building is not being demolished. The building's
No,
standing there, so
the
I have a
building-
flagpole and a plaque inside there. I don't see any reason off the top of my head why anybody would want them removed, unless they thought it was a keepsake that the family may want back.
And that was from my understanding, they wanted individuals to be able to have their personal belongings. So maybe that is the point. They thought it was somebody's personal belongings, and that's why they offered for the family to get it back.
Oh, they told them that way, and what I just told them. I said, either take the plaque off the wall, or the flagpole's theirs too. So, to take that plaque off the wall, if you take it, or they want to trash it. There you go. And it's a bronze plaque. Bronze plaque, there since almost the building's been there since 1969, 1969, I believe. Okay. And, family's been there for a long time. They're one of the families, besides the back grosses, besides the, Ranios. There's a lot of people that I know that was there for a long time, before I was there. You know what I mean? And you're hurting these people that all put their lives on behalf of this firehouse for years. There's nothing wrong with the fire company. They've been there since 1927, and it's been another 6 years, it'll be 100 years. 6 years from now. I don't know what's going on. Destroying the history of the fire company. We were the first fire company. We didn't do it through the township, but we did through the state and the county. And there was a reason for that. There was a reason for that. Fire members then put their own money in, purchased it, and started their own firehouse. They did it with their own money.
Mr. Cortez, there was a tremendous amount of, and again, throughout the entire township, at more than just Municipal Fire Department,
Yeah.
individuals that have legacies that spent a lifetime supporting their community. I assure you that Hamilton Town, this governing body in Hamilton Township is not trying to, we're trying to pick the pieces up from maybe some of the individuals that didn't have the best interest of the township at heart. And that's what we're doing. So we had a process we're going through, and we've been, listen, I came out personally with the chief, we spoke to the community, and now we're moving one step closer this evening, because it was a process for us to go through to make that firehouse open again.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. But the thing is, you're stepping on toes. I don't know why. And this year, seeing it right now, this is the first time I heard any correspondence about the firehouse.
Well, we've had
The
updates.
contract is being signed. We're going to be signing some kind of contract. I don't know nothing about it. I'm not aware of it or anything like that. You know,
We had to get to this process this evening, which we did.
Well,
So
I don't know.
we can't announce something before we do it. I mean, I'm sure you appreciate that, because there's many instances where we may turn around and expect something to happen, we announce it, and then it doesn't happen.
well, first of all, I would never shut down the firehouse the way you guys did it. Trucks should have been in there, and you locked it up. There's no access in that firehouse, so it belongs to the fire company. That building was the fire, you locked it up. It's like locking up a church.
You're taking a very simplistic approach to this.
I am not taking it.
And this township committee has done everything they could to protect the residents in that area and get to this point where we're at right now.
Okay, well, you need to listen to me. You know what I'm telling you? Is the pillar of that town, has been, this is where they go if they need help. I don't know what's going on with it. The guy has not been prosecuted yet that I know of. You're going too fast.
Mr. Cortez,
Everything's too fast.
what has occurred here today has been the subject matter of discussions in this room at public meetings repeatedly. I have reported to the the public through this meeting I'm gonna say 6 times,
Publicly?
right here in this room, public meeting.
No, I'm not. I came in here that day, I asked, what was going on with this?
I'm estimating 6, what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you're surprised, because it's been discussed here a lot. If I may.
Sure, Chief.
Mr. Cortez has been sent letters by the, Mr. Firehouse's attorney, Mr. Nestor, on several occasions. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about that, but I know that he has sent letters to you. So whether you got them or not, I'm not sure. But you
Still my same address?
There was an attempt to keep you loose, so I don't know where that fell short.
Well, again, like I said, I'm not a root. I have not received it. And I've been living in the same place. I get my tax money there. You know, everything. Same address for over 40 years. Okay?
Well,
I have not received anything. I'm not saying that the chief is wrong either. You know, or maybe somebody here, but somebody, I was not informed. And I'm just letting you know what happened to you 3 days ago. That a family member from your cabinet came to me and told me this.
And I think
And
I
they
mean,
were telling me their feelings.
and we take that very seriously, and Mr. Miller has asked who said it, so that way we can go ahead and investigate. And again, it appears that it may be a misunderstanding, because we wanted to make sure that anyone that had personal belongings in there got those personal belongings back. So that could be the reason, but Mr. Miller's gonna look into it, and we're gonna find out why that happened. If it was mistaken as a personal belonging, then obviously that's the case. If not, we'll go ahead and we'll look into that. But I do want to point out, and I can't help but saying it,
Right.
we had to deal with a situation that was presented to us. So not only are we going to return services, we're going to enhance services to that entire western side of the town through the MISPA Fire Department. So you're going to have a public works presence there. You're going to have an additional police presence there that will allow residents not have to come all the way into town to report problems. We're enhancing services there. So we didn't leave out the community. We're doing something in replacement of what was there, and we're enhancing upon it. So
Are we going to keep it in Mr. Fire Company?
that, it's in MISPA. I mean, that, you know, at the end.
That's what I'm trying to say. Are you going to keep that under Mr. Fire Company? The legacy of the fire company.
I
will not take the NISBA name off that property.
There you go.
That building will be renamed something like the Township Public Safety Annex or something along those lines. But that NISBA name will remain. I promise you.
Somebody needs to talk to at least their family and let them know that what happened.
If, listen, I can be reached at mayor@townshipofhamilton.com. If you would forward me their phone number, I will reach out to them personally. All right?
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak? Seeing no one, I'll entertain a motion. So moved. Have a motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn an executive session, Teamsters negotiations and contract negotiations.
So moved. Second.
Read a roll call, please.
Mr. Cheek?
Yes.
Mr. Bouchard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mayor Kane?
Yes.
Will we be coming back out?
Peter,
Don't
we
need
will
to.
not- We will not be, for the public, we will not be reconvening in public.
I don't think I need
Resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Hamilton that this meeting be
Oh,
adjourned
you mean
to
to-
executive session to discuss the following matters which are exempt from public discussion pursuant to the New Jersey Public Meetings Law, Teamsters negotiations, contract negotiations exception. Be it further resolved that the governing body will not reconvene in public session to confirm the results of the executive session. Be it further resolved that the results of said executive session shall be made known. Confidentiality is no longer